can start practicing by reading the Buddha's first teaching. He taught all the principles of practice there. In the beginning, he said there are two extremes that a practitioner shouldn't do. One is to be too slack, letting the body and mind wander off and follow sensual and mental pleasures. The other is self-physical or mental torture. What the Buddha told us to do is to follow the Noble Eightfold Path. It is the middle path that doesn't fall into the two extremes. We do so by observing the mind. No matter what posture you're in, when the mind wanders off to think, know so. Once you know so, the wandering off phenomenon will immediately stop. Or, during practicing, know if the body or the mind is stressed out from over-focusing and fixating. This stress in the mind can stiffen the body. Observe so. But knowing about your over-focusing won't immediately cure it, as over-focusing is good Dhamma, or act or deed, while the mind wandering off to get lost in sensual pleasures is bad Dhamma, or unwholesomeness. Once the mindfulness detects unwholesomeness, it will immediately cease. But knowing about your over-focusing won't immediately cure it, as it is a way to practice to reach the Brahman realm, which is not unwholesome, but it is not the path to Nibbana. Letting the mind wander off, following sensual pleasures, is unwholesome, and can cause rebirth in a bad realm. While over-focusing is wholesome, it can cause rebirth in the Brahman realm, but it isn't the path to Nibbana. That's the realm Prince Siddhartha's former teachers Alaro Kalamo and Udako Ramaputo were reborn in. When the mind wanders off into delusions, it is unwholesomeness and impurity. Once mindfulness knows it, the impurity will cease immediately. So when you become mindful that your mind has wandered off, the knowing mind will arise automatically. But when the mind knows that it is over-focusing, the over-focusing and dense feeling won't cease, because over-focusing isn't an unwholesomeness. If you want to reduce over-focusing, you must observe what drives that behavior. What drives over-focusing is the desires, cravings, and greed. You may wonder why greed drives the mind to over-focus, and why over-focusing isn't unwholesome. It's this. Unwholesomeness and impurities can give rise to wholesomeness. Unwholesomeness can also give rise to wholesomeness. For example, when mindfulness knows that the mind has wandered off, the wandering phenomenon, which is unwholesome, ceases immediately. The mind is over-focusing, and you're controlling the body and the mind. That in itself is an unwholesomeness. It's not a wholesomeness that a wise practitioner aims for. You can observe that what drives your over-focusing is the greed to be wholesome. When you practice, you want to be constantly mindful. You crave no period of mindlessness. This causes over-focusing. Once you know this craving, the over-focusing symptom will cease, because its cause is eradicated. Its cause is craving. Craving causes bhava, or becoming a practitioner. On the other hand, the mind that wanders off causes another becoming a non-practitioner. And non-practitioners are likely to be reborn in bad realms. A practitioner can be reborn in good realm, as high as the Brahman realm. But if you want to liberate yourself from all bhavas, or becoming, you observe until you see the root cause of your over-focusing. The mind wants to be wholesome, become liberated, and acquire freedom. Do you see that it is full of cravings and greed? When we think about practicing, we want to practice. Have you ever noticed that? If you want to practice, when you practice, you will over-focus. Suppose I tell you to start the practice now. What do? Control and adjust your posture first to be good looking. Once your posture is satisfactory, you try to control the mind to be still. This practice is useless. The most benefit you get is the Brahman realm. So when you notice that you're over-focusing or stressed out during practice, see the cravings and greed behind it. The greed to become wholesome, knowledgeable, or enlightened. Once you're mindful of the cravings and greed in your mind, the cravings and greed will cease, since they're unwholesome. Pawa or becoming that is caused by this greed will disappear. The dense feeling, however, will linger on a bit longer. This is because denseness is already the result of the act of over-focusing, the result of your own Dhamma. It will take some time for the mind to unwind. This period won't last long if you don't feed in more desire to be good at practicing. But if you keep craving to be good at practicing, you keep adding fuel to the fire, and the dense feeling won't cease. The middle path is very important in our practice. Before I became a monk, the things I taught my friends the most were, don't let the mind wander off. Don't over-focus. Letting the mind wander off is too slack. Over-focusing and fixating is too strict. Back then, some people laughed at this teaching and thought it was ridiculous. But I believe this is in line with what the Buddha taught. His first teaching started from pointing out the two extremes that practitioners should not do. Letting your mind wander off is getting mindlessly lost in sensual and mental pleasures, while over-focusing is self-torture. We avoid the two extremes and just be mindful, with a stable and concentrated mind. Use that kind of mind to observe the body and the mind, and wisdom will be cultivated.